Ever wondered why Ireland is so famous for its redheads? Is it just a stereotype, or is there a deep-rooted story behind those fiery locks? Well, let's dive into the fascinating history of red hair in the Emerald Isle. You might think red hair is everywhere in Ireland, but surprisingly, only about 10% of the population are natural redheads. However, a whopping 46% of Irish people carry the recessive gene for red hair. This means the potential for a redhead is incredibly high, making Ireland the country with the second highest concentration of redheads in the world, right after Scotland. So where did this gene come from? The story starts thousands of years ago. The gene responsible for red hair, known as the MC1R gene, is believed to have originated in Central Asia around 70,000 years ago. As ancient peoples migrated across the globe, they carried this gene with them. One major migration route led them westward, across Europe. These early settlers eventually reached the British Isles, including Ireland. In a place like Ireland, with its famously cloudy skies and limited sunlight, having fair skin was actually an advantage. Lighter skin is more efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight, which is crucial for bone health. The MC1R gene, which causes red hair, is also linked to fair skin and freckles. So, in the low sunlight environment of ancient Ireland, this gene variant wasn't just a cosmetic trait. It was a survival advantage. Natural selection likely played a role in making it more common in the population. Over the centuries, as Ireland remained relatively isolated, the gene became more concentrated. The Vikings, who raided and settled in Ireland from the 8th to the 11th century, also brought their own red hair genes, further mixing into the local gene pool. Many Vikings from Norway and Denmark were redheads, and their arrival added another layer to Ireland's genetic tapestry. Beyond the science, red hair has a powerful cultural symbolism in Ireland. In ancient Celtic mythology, red-haired women were often depicted as otherworldly beings, possessing magical powers and a fiery temperament. They were seen as figures of both beauty and danger, connected to the fairy world, or the other world. For example, the goddess Ain was known for her vibrant red hair and her association with the sun and fertility. This mythical connection has shaped how redheads are viewed in Irish culture for centuries. They've been celebrated in folklore, songs, and stories, embodying a spirit of wildness, passion, and a deep connection to Ireland's ancient past. It's a look that's both striking and steeped in history. So, the next time you see a redhead, remember that their hair color tells a story that stretches back tens of thousands of years, a tale of ancient migrations, genetic adaptation, and rich cultural mythology. It's a beautiful reminder of the intricate and fascinating history woven into the very fabric of Ireland. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. See you in the next video. You might think red hair is a classic, ancient Irish trait, but the story is much more complex and surprising than you'd imagine. Recent genetic studies on ancient Irish remains are completely rewriting what we thought we knew. So, is red hair really as Irish as we believe? Let's unravel the genetic threads of history and find out. The earliest evidence of human settlement in Ireland dates back to around 10,000 BC, shortly after the last ice age. These Mesolithic hunter-gatherers were the first people to call the island home. Thanks to ancient DNA analysis, we have a good idea of what they looked like. Studies of remains, like those from a cave in County Clare, show that these early inhabitants had dark to black hair and, in some cases, blue eyes. This genetic makeup, with dark hair and blue eyes, was common across Mesolithic Europe. It's a striking image, but one thing is clear: there is no evidence of red hair genes in these first Irish people. So, the story of red hair in Ireland doesn't start here. The next major chapter in Irish history begins around 4000 BC with the arrival of the Neolithic farmers. These people came from the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, bringing agriculture with them and forever changing the landscape and the gene pool of Ireland. They built the famous megalithic tombs like Newgrange and were genetically distinct from the hunter-gatherers they replaced. Analysis of their DNA shows they had dark hair, brown eyes, and a more Mediterranean complexion. Again, when scientists looked for the specific genetic variants responsible for red hair, like the A151C and A160W variants in the MC1R gene, they were completely absent. It seems that for thousands of years, red hair was simply not a feature of the Irish population. The plot thickens with the arrival of the Bronze Age around 2500 BC. This period brought another wave of migration to Ireland, this time from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, which is in modern-day Ukraine and southern Russia. These newcomers, associated with the Bell-Beaker culture, brought metallurgy, new burial customs, and a completely different genetic profile. Their DNA reveals a significant shift. For the first time in Irish history, we see the introduction of genes for lighter hair and eye colors, including the specific variants of the MC1R gene linked to red hair. However, it's important to note that these genes were still quite rare. Only a small fraction of the Bronze Age individuals studied carried the red hair variants. So, while the genetic potential for red hair had finally arrived in Ireland, it was far from common. The Bronze Age population was a mix, with some individuals now carrying the genes for red hair, but most still had brown or black hair. So, when did red hair become more common in Ireland? The genetic evidence suggests that the variants for red hair, although introduced in the Bronze Age, remained at low frequencies for a very long time. It wasn't until after the Bronze Age, during the Iron Age, and the early medieval period, that these genes started to become more prevalent. Why? The exact reasons are still debated by scientists. One theory is a process called genetic drift. In a relatively small and isolated population like ancient Ireland, random chance can cause certain genetic traits to become more common over generations, even if they don't offer a specific survival advantage. Another interesting theory relates to Ireland's unique climate. As you know, Ireland isn't famous for its sunny weather. It's often cloudy and overcast. The MC1R gene, which controls red hair, also affects skin pigmentation. People with red hair variants often have very fair skin that is more efficient at synthesizing vitamin D from limited sunlight. In a low sunlight environment like Ireland, this could have been a significant health advantage, helping to prevent diseases like rickets. Over many centuries, this advantage might have led to natural selection favoring the genes for fair skin and, as a byproduct, red hair. It's a fascinating idea that the cloudy Irish skies themselves might have helped make red hair a more common sight. Now let's talk about the Vikings. The Viking Age, from the late 8th to the 11th century, was a period of raids and settlement that had a lasting impact on Ireland. Many people assume the Vikings brought red hair to Ireland, but the genetic story is more of a two-way street. While it's true that red hair was present in the Scandinavian population, it wasn't necessarily more common than in Ireland at the time. In fact, genetic studies of Viking remains show that many Vikings who settled in Ireland were actually of Irish or mixed Irish-Norse ancestry. There was a lot of intermingling. Rather than introducing red hair, the Vikings likely added to the existing gene pool, and some Vikings may have even carried red hair genes from Ireland back to Scandinavia and Iceland. The flow of genes was complex and went in both directions. So, what does this all mean for the modern Irish population? Today, Ireland has one of the highest concentrations of redheads in the world, with about 10% of the population having red hair, and an estimated 40% of the Irish population are carriers of a red hair gene variant. This is the result of a long and complex history. It started with the arrival of the red hair genes during the Bronze Age, followed by centuries of genetic drift and possibly natural selection in Ireland's unique environment. The migrations and interactions with groups like the Vikings added more layers to this genetic tapestry. The red hair we see in Ireland today isn't the result of a single ancient Celtic origin, but rather a product of thousands of years of migration, mixing, and adaptation on the island. It's amazing how ancient DNA transforming our understanding of the past. The idea of the ancient Irish redhead is more of a modern perception than a historical reality. The first inhabitants of Ireland had dark hair, and it took thousands of years and several waves of migration for the genes responsible for red hair to even arrive on the island. Even then, it took many more centuries for those genes to become as common as they are today. The story of red hair is a perfect example of how human populations are constantly changing and evolving. It's a story written in our DNA, connecting us to a deep and dynamic past. So, the next time you see someone with fiery red hair, you can appreciate the incredible journey their genes have taken through thousands of years of human history. It's a tale of migration from the eastern steppes, adaptation to the cloudy skies of the North Atlantic, and the unique genetic shuffle that happened on the island of Ireland. What a fascinating story. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into our genetic past, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.